Hello, today we are going to look at the reduction of adjective and adverb clauses. The texts below are two versions of a text which has been adapted from New Language Leader Intermediate Coursebook Unit 6. Read them and find the differences between the italic sentences. You can pause the video here. Now, this is the second set of the examples. Do the same, please. You can pause the video here. Right. So, how can a relative clause be reduced? Can you complete the following rules? If the relative clause contains the verb to be, you may omit the relative pronoun and the verb to be. If the relative clause does not contain the verb to be, sometimes you may omit the relative pronoun and change the verb to its ing form. So, reduction is possible both in defining and non-defining relative clauses, but be careful, you can only reduce the subject relative clauses. In addition to these ways, a relative clause can be reduced by using an infinitive phrase if it is used with the following structures. Ordinal numbers, the first, the next, the second, the last, etc. Mike was the last person who entered the room. Mike was the last person to enter the room. The only. Marie Curie was the only woman who won the Nobel Prize twice. Marie Curie was the only woman to win the Nobel Prize twice. Superlatives. Mary was the oldest person who finished the course successfully. Mary was the oldest person to finish the course successfully. Modal verbs in the clause. Jim has many responsibilities that he has to fulfill. Jim has many responsibilities to fulfill. Now let's look at practice 1. Rewrite the following sentences, reducing the relative clauses. You can pause the video here. The woman who is sitting in the corner seems familiar to me. So, look at the rules, remember the rules. This relative clause is in subject position and I see the verb to be here. So, the answer is the woman sitting in the corner seems familiar to me. So, you can omit the relative pronoun and you omit the verb to be. What about the second example? Yesterday, I was the last person who left the office. Again, this is subject position and I have this the last structure here. So, the answer is yesterday, I was the last person to leave the office. So, I omit the relative pronoun and I change the verb into infinitive form. Number 3. Roots, which was written by Alex Haley, is the history of one black American family. Now, this time I have the non-defining relative clause, but remember we can do reduction both in defining and non-defining relative clauses. So, as long as I have the relative clause in subject position, so the answer is going to be Roots, written by Alex Haley, is the history of one black American family. Let's look at number 4. Neil Armstrong was the first man who walked on the moon. The first man. So, the rule is like this, the first man to walk on the moon. Number 5. the fence that surrounds their house is not so high. Now remember the second rule we talked about in the earlier slide. Sometimes you don't have the verb to be, but you have verb 1. So it's in subject position. I can omit the relative pronoun that, and this time I have to change verb 1 into ing. So the answer is the fence surrounding their house is not so high. Now let's look at these example sentences. Again, you can pause the video here. Mr. Smith, who is our next door neighbor, is very much interested in what is going on in our house. Mr. Smith, our next door neighbor, is very much interested in what is going on in our house. Number 7, the only man who should get this position is Mr. Black. The only man, so you use infinitive to get this position is Mr. Black. Number 8, if you go away next week, we will have to find someone who will look after our dog. Who will look after? It will become to look after our dog. Number 9. Mr. Brown, who was once a famous star, is now a hopeless alcoholic. Mr. Brown, once a famous star. So again, I omit the relative pronoun who and I omit the verb to be. Be careful, the verb to be can be in any tense, present tense, past tense. The rule is the same. You omit the relative pronoun and the verb to be. And number 10, we were all relieved to get further news which concerned the accident. Now, this is subject relative clause. Here, I don't have the verb to be, but I have verb to this time. So, the sentence becomes like this. We were all relieved to get further news concerning the accident. Now, what about the expressions of quantity in relative clauses? A relative clause may contain an expression of quantity with of. Some examples of these expressions are some of, most of, many of, none of, all of, each of, etc. Relative clauses with these expressions have commas and are more common in writing than in speaking. So let's look at the expressions of quantity in relative clauses. Sally had 3 very close friends. 2 of them were from the States. So I have this 2 of them structure. So the answer is going to be like this. Sally had 3 very close friends, comma, 2 of whom, because this them refers to people, so I have to use whom. Right? So 2 of whom were from the States. Now let's look at the second example. At the casino, he won £100. He gambled all of it away again. Now, this time, all of. This is object position. Be careful. When it's object position, this all of it actually defines the money that he won. So I have to carry it just after the noun it describes. And then there's this quantity expression. And it refers to money. So I have to use which. So the answer is all of which. Then there's the comma also. So all of which he gambled away again. Now let's look at the other one. My father gave me a chest full of books. Most of them were rather old. Now most of them refers to books. And this is subject position here. So your job is easy. You don't have to change the place of the relative clause as it was in the earlier sentence. So it's going to be most of which, comma, and then them, which. Right? So, the assistant managers have suggested radical reforms. Both of them are efficient in their work. Now, this them refers to what? Managers or radical reforms? Think of it first, then give your answer. So, the assistant managers, both of whom are efficient in their work, have suggested radical reforms. So, this them refers to managers. That's why I used whom here. and I have to write it just after the noun it describes, and then I have my comma. So this is your answer. Now let's look at practice 2. Can you please join the following sentences using a relative clause? You can pause the video here. So these are the answers. Right. Let's continue with the next set. Again, you can pause the video here. Right, these are the answers. Now we have reduction of adverb clauses, that is, participles. Adverb clauses, such as clauses of time and clauses of reason, can be reduced. Study the following pairs of sentences. The first is the original sentence from the text that contains a reduced adverb clause. The second is the same sentence with the full form of the adverb clause. Compare each pair and see how adverb clauses are reduced. Time. She became the first female doctor in her country after graduating from medical school in 1896. She became the first female doctor in her country after she graduated from medical school in 1896. So the first example, ing, is a participle. So what is the difference between a gerund and a participle? Remember, gerunds are verb ing used as nouns. 2. Later, while working with deprived children, she set up a children's house in Rome. Later, while she was working with deprived children, she set up a children's house in Rome. 3. When asked to explain her approach, Maria Montessori always said, "The goal is to prepare children for a lifetime of creative thinking and learning." When asked, this is a participle. So, when she was asked to explain her approach, Maria Montessori always said, "The goal is to prepare children for a lifetime of creative thinking and learning." Reason. It emphasizes the fact that, being unique individuals, children must be free to learn without being criticized or restricted. The original long sentence without the reduction is actually, it emphasizes the fact that, as they are unique individuals, children must be free to learn without being criticized or restricted. As is because, so if you have because reason clause in a sentence, you can reduce it in this way. Being offered a range of activities, children can develop a social life based on cooperation rather than competition. Because they are offered a range of activities, children can develop a social life based on cooperation rather than competition. So, because they are offered, this is a clause of reason. So how do you reduce it? You don't write because. And then remember, we can use ing. This is, be careful, passive, so being offered. 6. Taking part in controlling the pace, topic, and lessons. Children enjoy learning, and this gives them confidence and makes them happy. Because they take part in controlling the pace, topic, and lessons, children enjoy learning, and this gives them confidence and makes them happy. So here, because they take part in controlling the pace is your clause of reason. So you reduce it in this way. Now, perfect forms. When an adverb clause has a perfect tense, it is reduced with the perfect form in it. It is the reduced form of either the present perfect or the past perfect tense. Remember, perfect tenses emphasize the completion of an earlier action or the fact that the earlier action covers a period of time. Note that the time reference of the participle is determined according to the verb in the main clause. Having collected all her data, Susan is going to start writing her report. So we have a perfect form here because first she collects the data, then she starts writing the report. So in order to show the time difference between these two main verbs, I have to use perfect participle. So here, actually, after she has collected her data, this is after, remember, we can use participles. So another alternative for this is after collecting the data. Having tied up her room, Louise went downstairs to have lunch. First, she tidied her room, then she went downstairs to have lunch. So I have to show this time difference. That's why I use perfect participle. Actually, the main original sentence can be after she had tidied up her room, Louise went downstairs. Having lived in Paris for many years, Alex speaks French like a native. This time there is a reason clause and also there's a time difference. So because Alex has lived in Paris for many years, he speaks French like a native. How do we show that there's this time difference and then there is a clause of reason? So it's going to be having lived. Having studied the map, Rod knew which way to go. Because he had studied the map, Rod knew which way to go. Not having been there before, he felt like a stranger. This is again a reason clause. So, as he hadn't been there before, he felt like a stranger. Now, look at practice 4. Complete the following sentences using the verbs in the box and reduced adverb clauses. First, think of your answers. You can pause the video here. Right, these are the answers. Now let's look at practice 5. Read the text below and join or rewrite the underlined sentences using reduced adverb clauses. Think again. Pause the video first. Okay, these are our answers. Okay, question 2. Right, these are the answers. Question 4. And these are the rewritten forms of the sentences. Well, this is the end of our lesson. I hope it's been useful for you. Bye.